In recent years, General Motors has faced a barrage of criticism from consumers, industry analysts, and regulatory bodies over recurring defects in its vehicles, particularly in core components like engines and transmissions that are essential for performance and safety. These issues have not only led to a surge in customer complaints, but have also triggered multiple large-scale recalls, eroding the company's once sterling reputation for building durable American-made trucks and sport utility vehicles. For instance, the 6.2-liter V8 engine, known by its internal designation as the L87, which powers popular models such as the Chevrolet Silverado, GMC, Sierra Chevrolet Tahoe, and Cadillac Escalade, has been at the center of a major controversy. This engine, hailed for its power and efficiency, has suffered from manufacturing flaws that could result in catastrophic failures, including damaged connecting rods and crankshafts, often leaving drivers stranded and facing repair bills in the thousands of dollars. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration expanded its investigation into these problems in late 2025, examining over 3,000 reported engine failures across model years from 2019 to 2024, highlighting concerns about potential safety risks like sudden loss of power on highways. The root of many of these engine troubles traces back to supplier-related defects and design choices aimed at improving fuel economy, but which have inadvertently compromised reliability. Active fuel management and dynamic fuel management systems, technologies designed to deactivate cylinders under light loads to save fuel, have been implicated in widespread lifter failures in both the 5.3-liter and 6.2-liter V8 engines. These systems, while innovative on paper, have led to premature wear on components like valve lifters and oil pumps, often exacerbated by the use of lighter-weight oils that can clog passages or fail to provide adequate lubrication during transitions between cylinder modes. Owners of affected vehicles, particularly those from 2014 to 2024 model years, report symptoms such as ticking noises, reduced power, and, in severe cases, complete engine seizures after as few as 50,000 miles. General Motors has acknowledged these issues, attributing them in part to manufacturing inconsistencies from suppliers, but critics argue that the company's aggressive push for cost reductions has played a significant role, including the selection of lower-grade materials that do not hold up under real-world stresses. Beyond the V8 power plants, General Motors' diesel offerings have also come under scrutiny, with the 3.0-liter inline-six turbo diesel Duramax engine, coded as LZ0, drawing particular attention in 2025 and 2026 models. Installed in light-duty pickups and sport utility vehicles like the Chevrolet Silverado 1500 and GMC Yukon, this engine has been plagued by reports of mechanical rattling or knocking sounds emanating from the bell housing area, often linked to excessive crankshaft end play and potential thrust-bearing wear. General Motors issued a technical service bulletin in September 2025 to guide dealers in diagnosing and repairing these concerns, which can trigger diagnostic trouble codes and lead to reduced engine performance. While the company insists it is monitoring repair rates closely and providing warranty-covered fixes, online forums and owner groups are filled with stories of repeated visits to service centers, with some vehicles requiring full engine replacements after fewer than 30,000 miles. This has amplified frustrations among fleet operators and individual buyers who rely on these trucks for towing and heavy-duty tasks, where downtime translates directly to lost productivity and income. Transmission woes have compounded General Motors' quality challenges, with the 10-speed automatic transmission, a joint development with Ford, emerging as a frequent pain point in recent models. Introduced to enhance shifting smoothness and fuel efficiency, this gearbox has been subject to multiple recalls affecting hundreds of thousands of vehicles, including the Chevrolet Camaro, Cadillac CT4, and heavy-duty trucks like the GMC Sierra 2500. Common complaints include shuddering during shifts, premature valve body failures, and in extreme cases, rear-wheel lockups that pose serious safety hazards. By mid-2025, General Motors had rolled out a third-generation valve body design as a fix for half-ton gasoline-powered trucks, but owners of heavy-duty variants were left waiting, relying on software updates that merely mitigate symptoms rather than address underlying hardware flaws. These issues had been particularly acute in 2020 to 22 models, where early production units suffered from inconsistent fluid pressures and torque converter problems, leading to class action lawsuits and demands for extended warranties. Other systems in General Motors vehicles have not escaped criticism, with electrical and infotainment glitches adding to the chorus of dissatisfaction. Models like the Chevrolet Equinox and Buick Enclave have seen persistent problems with touchscreen interfaces, Bluetooth connectivity, and sensor malfunctions, often stemming from software bugs or poor integration of components from third-party suppliers. In the 2025 launches of redesigned crossovers such as the Chevrolet Traverse and GMC Acadia, early adopters reported coolant leaks from engine blocks and torque converter failures in transmissions. prompting service bulletins and loss of recommended status from Consumer Reports due to below-average reliability scores. These setbacks have been especially damaging as they coincide with General Motors' efforts to refresh its lineup amid competitive pressures. Yet they underscore a broader pattern of rushed production timelines and insufficient testing protocols. Industry observers note that older models, like the 2015 to 2021 Chevrolet Tahoe, have also grappled with excessive oil consumption, cracked dashboards, and grounding faults in electrical systems, issues that persist despite incremental updates. At the heart of these persistent problems, former engineers and industry insiders point to systemic cost-cutting measures implemented by General Motors in pursuit of higher profit margins and shareholder returns. This includes outsourcing critical parts to lower-cost suppliers, often overseas, where quality controls may not meet the rigorous standards once enforced in-house. For example, components like camshafts and high-pressure fuel pumps in the L87 engine have been sourced from vendors facing their own manufacturing challenges, leading to inconsistencies in metallurgy and assembly that manifest as early failures under normal driving conditions. Critics argue that this shift prioritizes short-term financial gains, such as reducing per-unit production costs by 10 to 20%, over long-term vehicle durability, a strategy that has backfired as warranty claims soar into the billions of dollars. Between 2023 and 2025 alone, General Motors incurred over $4 billion in recall-related expenses, covering everything from supplier defects to software patches, straining resources that could otherwise fund innovation. The human impact of these quality lapses cannot be overstated, with countless owners sharing tales of frustration and financial hardship on social media, forums, and review sites. A Chevrolet Silverado driver in Texas, for instance, might find their truck immobilized on a remote highway due to a sudden engine shutdown, while a family relying on a GMC Yukon for daily commutes could face weeks without transportation as parts shortages delay repairs. Dealerships, overwhelmed by the volume of service requests, have reported backlogs extending months, further alienating loyal customers who once viewed General Motors as synonymous with reliability. Regulatory scrutiny has intensified as well, with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration probing not just the mechanical failures, but also General Motors' response times and transparency in addressing them. In response, the company has ramped up quality assurance initiatives, including enhanced supplier audits and in-house testing. But skeptics question whether these steps are sufficient to reverse the damage to brand trust. As General Motors navigates these turbulent waters, the accumulation of quality issues serves as a cautionary tale for the automotive industry, where the balance between innovation, cost efficiency, and reliability is more precarious than ever. While the company continues to dominate in segments like full-size trucks, with sales figures showing resilience in 2025, the long-term prognosis hinges on its ability to rectify these deep-seated problems. Failure to do so could accelerate the dire predictions from critics, including engineers who have publicly decried the erosion of engineering standards in favor of bottom-line priorities. For now, General Motors maintains that it is committed to customer satisfaction, offering extended warranties and proactive recalls, but the road to redemption will require more than words. It demands tangible improvements in every vehicle rolling off the assembly line. Critics, including former General Motors employees and industry analysts, have increasingly accused the company of embracing planned obsolescence as a core strategy in recent decades, a practice where vehicles are intentionally engineered with a limited lifespan to stimulate repeat purchases and sustain revenue streams. This approach, while not exclusive to General Motors and rooted in historical automotive industry tactics dating back to the 1920s under executive Alfred P. Sloan Jr., who popularized annual model changes to foster dissatisfaction with older vehicles, has allegedly intensified in modern times through deliberate choices in materials, design tolerances, and component durability. A former powertrain engineer speaking anonymously in interviews that gained traction in 2025 described how General Motors shifted from building robust, long-lasting products to ones optimized for a specific mileage or time horizon, often around 100,000 to 150,000 miles, beyond which major failures become more likely and costly. This shift, according to the engineer, allows the company to balance warranty obligations, typically covering the first 3 years or 36,000 miles, with powertrain coverage extending to 5 years or 60,000 miles in many cases, while encouraging owners to trade in or replace vehicles sooner, thereby driving new vehicle sales and aftermarket service revenue. The mechanics of this alleged strategy often involve subtle downgrades in component quality that are offset by compensatory engineering tweaks, creating an illusion of progress while reducing long-term reliability. For example, in transmissions like the 4L60E, which powered many General Motors vehicles for years, engineers reportedly used lower-grade metals for critical gear sets as a cost-saving measure. then added an extra pinion gear to redistribute torque loads and maintain performance ratings during testing. This modification allowed the transmission to pass internal durability cycles, typically designed to simulate 150,000 miles of use, but real-world stresses such as towing heavy loads or operating in extreme temperatures exposed the underlying weaknesses sooner than in prior generations. Similar patterns have emerged in more recent designs, including the 10-speed automatic transmission code developed with Ford, where owners of models like the Chevrolet Silverado and GMC Sierra have reported shuddering harsh shifts and premature valve body failures, often requiring expensive repairs or replacements outside of warranty periods. These issues, while sometimes addressed through software updates or revised hardware generations, have fueled suspicions that the core architecture prioritizes short-term cost efficiency over extended service life. Engine components have drawn particular ire in discussions of planned obsolescence at General Motors. The company's small-block V8 engines, including the 5.3-liter and 6.2-liter variants equipped with active fuel management or dynamic fuel management systems, have been criticized for lifter and camshaft wear that leads to catastrophic failures well before 200,000 miles in many cases. Former insiders claim that lighter materials, thinner oil passages, and tolerances tightened for fuel economy gains contribute to these problems, with the added complexity of cylinder deactivation technology accelerating wear on components not originally designed for frequent mode switching. To compensate for potential weaknesses in metallurgy or lubrication, engineers allegedly incorporate redundant features or software mitigations that mask issues during factory testing and early ownership but fail to prevent degradation over time. This results in vehicles that perform adequately for the warranty duration, but face escalating repair costs thereafter, pushing owners toward new purchases rather than expensive overhauls. Beyond powertrains, broader vehicle systems reflect this philosophy through the increased use of electronics, sensors, and proprietary software that complicate repairs and inflate costs. Modern General Motors models integrate extensive controller area network bus systems and module-specific coding that ties components like window motors, infotainment units, and even certain body control modules to the vehicle's unique vehicle identification number. Critics argue this creates artificial barriers to independent repair, as technicians outside dealership networks struggle with reprogramming or sourcing compatible parts, effectively shortening the practical lifespan of otherwise mechanically sound vehicles. Software updates intended to improve performance or emissions compliance can sometimes introduce new glitches or disable features, further eroding owner confidence and encouraging turnover. In contrast to older designs from the 1980s and 1990s where mechanical simplicity allowed vehicles to reach 300,000 miles or more with basic maintenance, contemporary General Motors products are said to be engineered for a finite cycle, aligning with industry trends but amplified by the company's emphasis on shareholder returns and quarterly financial targets. The financial incentives behind planned obsolescence are clear in industry analyses. By designing vehicles to require replacement every 5 to 10 years rather than 15 to 20 manufacturers like General Motors can maintain higher production volumes and profit margins, even as individual unit profitability narrows due to competition and regulatory pressures. Warranty claims have risen sharply in recent years, with General Motors reporting billions in expenses tied to recalls and extended coverage for engines and transmissions. Yet proponents of the strategy contend that these costs are outweighed by the benefits of sustained demand. Customer dissatisfaction manifests in online forums, class action lawsuits, and declining brand loyalty, with many owners expressing regret over investments in trucks or sport utility vehicles that fail prematurely under normal use. Fleet operators, in particular, highlight how these patterns disrupt operations and inflate total ownership costs, prompting shifts toward competitors perceived as offering greater durability. Environmental and societal implications add another layer to the criticism, as accelerated vehicle turnover contributes to increased manufacturing resource consumption, waste from scrapped parts, and higher emissions over a product's lifecycle compared to longer-lasting designs. While General Motors has invested in electrification and sustainability initiatives, detractors argue that planned obsolescence undermines these efforts by perpetuating a throwaway culture in personal transportation. Defenders within the industry, including some current and former engineers, maintain that true planned obsolescence, intentionally building in failure points, is overstated, and that vehicles are simply designed to meet market expectations for affordability features and efficiency within realistic durability targets, with most components tested far beyond typical consumer usage. Nevertheless, the accumulation of complaints, high-profile failures, and whistleblower accounts has solidified perceptions that General Motors has drifted toward a model favoring frequent replacements over timeless reliability. As debates rage in 2026, with ongoing investigations into engine and transmission issues, the company's response includes extended warranties, proactive service campaigns, and promises of improved quality controls. Yet, for many observers, these measures treat symptoms rather than addressing the underlying shift toward shorter product life cycles. The future of General Motors' reputation and its ability to retain loyal customers may depend on whether it can reverse course, prioritizing engineering excellence and longevity in an era where consumers increasingly demand value that endures beyond the showroom shine. General Motors invested tens of billions of dollars over the past decade in a bold push toward electrification, positioning itself as a leader in the shift from traditional internal combustion engines to battery-powered vehicles. The centerpiece of this strategy was the Ultium battery platform, a modular architecture developed in partnership with LG Energy Solution through the joint venture known as Ultium Cells. This technology promised scalable, high-performance batteries for a wide range of vehicles, from affordable crossovers to luxury sport utility vehicles and heavy-duty trucks. By 2025, General Motors had committed to launching dozens of electric models under brands including Chevrolet, Cadillac, GMC, and Buick. With ambitious targets to achieve 1 million annual electric vehicle sales in the United States and to make all new light-duty vehicles fully electric by 2035. The company built or planned multiple battery cell manufacturing facilities across North America, including sites in Warren, Ohio, Spring Hill, Tennessee, and Lansing, Michigan, aiming for vertical integration to control costs and supply chains in a rapidly evolving market. Despite these investments and early momentum where General Motors achieved record electric vehicle sales volumes in 2025, the transition encountered severe headwinds that forced a dramatic reassessment. Consumer demand for battery electric vehicles softened significantly throughout the year, particularly after policy changes under the new administration terminated certain federal consumer tax incentives, such as the $7,500 credit for qualifying electric purchases, and reduced the stringency of emissions regulations that had previously pressured automakers toward electrification. Industry-wide electric vehicle sales growth in the United States decelerated sharply, increasing by only about 1.2% in 2025, according to research from firms like Omdia, a stark contrast to the double-digit gains seen in prior years. Automotive data provider Edmunds projected that electric vehicles would represent roughly 6% of total United States vehicle sales in 2026, down from 7.4% in 2025. General Motors itself reported a 43% year-over-year drop in electric vehicle deliveries during the fourth quarter of 2025, falling to just over 25,000 units, even as earlier quarters benefited from a rush of buyers seeking to claim expiring incentives. This slowdown in adoption exposed overcapacity in General Motors' electric vehicle ecosystem, leading to aggressive cost-cutting and restructuring measures. The company idled production at key Ultium Cells joint venture battery facilities in Warren, Ohio and Spring Hill, Tennessee for a 6-month period beginning in January 2026, placing hundreds of workers on temporary layoff, approximately 850 in Ohio and 700 in Tennessee, while production paused until mid-2026. General Motors also sold its interest in the Ultium Cells facility in Lansing, Michigan, back to partner LG Energy Solution to reduce exposure to underutilized battery capacity. Assembly operations shifted as well, with the Orion, Michigan plant originally configured for electric vehicle production, reconverted to build full-size internal combustion engine-powered sport utility vehicles and pickups, segments where General Motors maintains strong demand and profitability advantages. The financial toll of this pivot proved substantial, with General Motors recording massive write-downs and charges tied directly to its scaled-back electric ambitions. In the third quarter of 2025, the company took a $1.6 billion impairment related to unused equipment and initial supplier adjustments. This was followed by far larger hits announced in early 2026, a special charge of approximately $6 billion to $7.1 billion in the fourth quarter of 2025, encompassing asset write-downs, contract cancellations, and settlements with suppliers who had ramped up production, expecting much higher volumes. Of this amount, roughly $4.2 billion represented cash outflows for terminating or renegotiating supplier agreements, while the remainder covered non-cash impairments on battery factories, assembly lines, and related investments now deemed less valuable amid slower market growth. Combined with earlier 2025 charges, the total electric vehicle-related financial impact for the year approached $7.6 billion. Management indicated that additional, though significantly smaller, charges would likely materialize in 2026 as negotiations with the supply base continued, reflecting ongoing efforts to align commitments with revised demand forecasts. These setbacks highlighted deeper challenges in General Motors' electric vehicle strategy beyond mere market timing. The Ultium platform, while technologically advanced with features like large pouch cells and flexible chemistries, faced criticism for higher-than-expected production costs, supply chain vulnerabilities, and integration issues that delayed some model launches or limited competitiveness against rivals like Tesla, which benefited from economies of scale and vertical integration. General Motors' heavy bet on full battery electric vehicles, eschewing a broader emphasis on hybrids during the transition, left it exposed when consumers proved reluctant to embrace pure electrics amid concerns over charging infrastructure, range anxiety up front, pricing, and the availability of affordable options. Competitors who maintained hybrid lineups captured shifting buyer preferences more effectively, prompting analysts to question whether General Motors misjudged the pace and nature of the electrification curve. Broader industry dynamics amplified General Motors' difficulties, as peers like Ford announced even larger restructurings, up to $19.5 billion in special charges, and Stellantis delayed or canceled electric programs in favor of more balanced portfolios. The combination of policy reversals, economic uncertainty, and consumer hesitation created a volatile environment where aggressive electric vehicle investments became liabilities rather than assets. General Motors responded by emphasizing flexibility building to actual demand, pursuing cost reductions through larger battery modules and new chemistries, and leveraging its strengths in profitable internal combustion engine trucks and sport utility vehicles to weather the period. Despite the pullback, General Motors has not abandoned electrification entirely. Executives, including Chief Executive Officer Mary Barra, have expressed no regrets over the long-term direction, viewing the adjustments as necessary recalibrations rather than retreats. The company continues to roll out models on the Ultium platform, such as the Chevrolet Equinox Electric, Blazer Electric, and Cadillac offerings, while focusing on profitability improvements and gradual scaling. Nonetheless, the experience underscores the risks of betting heavily on a transformative technology whose adoption trajectory remains unpredictable, influenced by regulatory shifts, infrastructure development, and evolving buyer priorities. As 2026 unfolds, General Motors' ability to stabilize its electric vehicle business, reduce losses, and position for eventual recovery will test the resilience of its electrification strategy amid a market that has proven far choppier than initial forecasts anticipated. General Motors continues to grapple with elevated debt levels that place significant strain on its balance sheet, limiting financial flexibility at a time when the company faces multiple operational and market challenges. As of the third quarter of 2025, the company's debt-to-equity ratio stood at approximately 2.00, with total stockholders' equity reported at around $66,374 million. This ratio reflects total debt, including both short-term and long-term obligations, divided by shareholders' equity, indicating a relatively high reliance on borrowed funds to finance operations and investments. Short-term debt and capital lease obligations amounted to roughly $36,477 million, while long-term debt and capital lease obligations reached about $96,026 million, contributing to a total debt figure that has hovered in the range of $130 billion or more in recent periods. Analysts note that while this leverage is common in the automotive sector, particularly given General Motors Financial, the captive finance arm that finances vehicle purchases and leases, the elevated ratio approaches levels seen in periods of heightened financial stress and raises concerns about the company's ability to absorb additional shocks without further strain. The debt burden traces its roots in part to the company's financing subsidiary, General Motors Financial, which accounts for the majority of the overall debt through consumer and commercial lending activities. This structure allows General Motors to capture interest income from vehicle loans and leases, but also exposes the parent company to interest rate fluctuations, credit risks from borrowers, and the need to maintain substantial liquidity reserves. Total debt figures have fluctuated but remain substantial, with long-term debt alone increasing year over year in recent quarters, reaching $96 billion by late 2025. While much of this debt supports profitable financing operations, it still contributes to overall leverage that constrains the automotive division's maneuverability. Industry observers point out that General Motors' net debt factoring in cash and equivalents remains high, often exceeding $100 billion, underscoring persistent pressures even as the company generates positive operating cash flows in core vehicle sales. Compounding these debt concerns are substantial legacy obligations stemming from decades of operations, particularly pensions and retiree healthcare benefits that continue to weigh on the balance sheet long after the company's emergence from its 2009 bankruptcy restructuring. During that historic Chapter 11 reorganization, General Motors shed billions in debt and restructured pension liabilities, but significant unfunded or underfunded post-retirement benefits persisted for retirees, especially salaried workers and certain union groups. These legacy costs include defined benefit pension plans and other post-employment benefits, such as healthcare coverage, which require ongoing funding contributions and actuarial adjustments. Although the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation assumed some responsibilities post-bankruptcy, General Motors retained sizable liabilities for remaining plans, with periodic charges reflecting changes in discount rates, investment returns, and demographic factors. In recent financial disclosures, these obligations appear as non-current liabilities, adding to the overall debt-like pressures that reduce available capital for new investments in technology, electrification, or debt reduction. Retiree healthcare obligations, in particular, represent a lingering financial drag, as General Motors has phased out or modified certain benefits over the years, often replacing comprehensive coverage with fixed pension supplements that fall short of rising medical costs. For many pre-bankruptcy retirees, especially salaried ones, healthcare benefits were curtailed or eliminated at age 65, shifted toward Medicare supplementation with limited company contributions. This has led to ongoing debates, lawsuits from retiree groups seeking to restore benefits, and periodic accounting adjustments that impact earnings. While not classified strictly as debt, these unfunded post-retirement liabilities function similarly by requiring future cash outflows, often in the hundreds of millions annually, further limiting financial headroom amid economic uncertainty or downturns in vehicle demand. Recent quarterly earnings have amplified these financial pressures through a combination of one-time charges, recall expenses, and adjustments related to the scaled-back electric vehicle strategy. In the latter half of 2025, General Motors absorbed billions in special items, including impairments on battery-related assets and supplier contract settlements, which directly hit profitability and strained cash reserves. These hits came on top of elevated warranty costs from persistent quality issues and restructuring expenses tied to production pauses at battery facilities. The result has been volatility in reported earnings, with adjusted figures sometimes masking underlying pressures from legacy costs and debt servicing. Interest expenses, while manageable given current rates and investment-grade credit ratings, still consume a portion of operating income, particularly as the company balances debt maturities, some in the tens of billions coming due in the mid-2020s, with refinancing needs. The combination of high debt, legacy obligations, and recent financial hits restricts General Motors' strategic options significantly. With substantial capital tied up in servicing debt and funding pensions or retiree benefits, the company has less room to invest aggressively in emerging technologies, weather potential sales slowdowns, or pursue acquisitions without increasing leverage further or diluting shareholders through equity raises. Credit rating agencies monitor these metrics closely, and while General Motors maintains investment-grade status on its senior unsecured debt, any deterioration could raise borrowing costs and exacerbate pressures. Management has emphasized liquidity buffers, often in the tens of billions, and cash generation from strong truck and sport utility vehicle sales as mitigating factors, arguing that the debt structure supports growth rather than threatens solvency. Nonetheless, critics highlight that without meaningful deleveraging or cost reductions in legacy areas, the elevated debt-to-equity ratio and ongoing obligations could hinder recovery efforts and leave the company vulnerable to another downturn, echoing echoes of pre-2009 vulnerabilities despite post-bankruptcy reforms. As General Motors navigates 2026, these financial pressures remain a central concern for investors and analysts tracking the company's path forward. Sustained profitability in core segments, disciplined capital allocation, and potential reductions in legacy liabilities through actuarial improvements or plan changes will be critical to easing the burden. Failure to address these issues effectively could constrain innovation and competitiveness, reinforcing pessimistic views about long-term sustainability in an industry undergoing rapid transformation. For now, General Motors continues to manage its debt profile through refinancing, operational cash flows, and strategic adjustments. But the interplay of high leverage and persistent legacy costs underscores the delicate balance the company must maintain to avoid renewed financial distress. Internal critiques of General Motors paint a picture of a corporate culture that has increasingly prioritized financial metrics and short-term shareholder returns over the engineering excellence that once defined the company as an American industrial powerhouse. Former employees, including engineers who have spoken publicly in interviews and forums during 2025 and 2026, describe an environment where decisions frequently favor cost reductions, stock buybacks, and executive incentive structures tied to earnings per share and total shareholder return rather than investments in robust product development or long-term durability. This shift, critics argue, stems from a post-bankruptcy emphasis on profitability and capital returns to investors, with billions allocated to share repurchases, such as accelerated programs worth billions in recent years, while quality initiatives and innovation budgets face tighter scrutiny. For instance, executive compensation packages, including those for Chair and Chief Executive Officer Mary Barra, have drawn scrutiny for their heavy reliance on stock awards and performance bonuses linked to financial targets, with total compensation reaching tens of millions annually in periods of strong earnings, even amid rising warranty costs and recall expenses. Detractors contend that this alignment incentivizes leaders to focus on quarterly results and stock price appreciation, often boosted through buybacks that reduce outstanding shares and inflate earnings per share, rather than allocating resources toward addressing persistent engineering challenges or fostering a culture of rigorous quality assurance. This financial-first orientation has reportedly permeated decision-making processes, where engineering proposals for higher-grade materials, more extensive testing protocols, or redundant safety features are often challenged or scaled back if they threaten profit margins. Insiders describe a dynamic in which cost targets from finance teams override engineering recommendations, leading to compromises in component specifications that later manifest as reliability issues. The corporate emphasis on meeting or exceeding investor expectations has also influenced resource allocation, with significant capital directed toward shareholder-friendly actions like dividends and repurchases instead of bolstering research and development in areas critical for future competitiveness. While General Motors maintains that its governance structure prioritizes long-term shareholder interests through transparent reporting and ethical operations, critics, including some shareholder advocates, argue that the heavy weighting toward short-term financial metrics has contributed to a culture where engineering voices are sometimes sidelined, fostering frustration among technical staff and contributing to talent attrition in key areas. Compounding these internal dynamics are strategic missteps in adapting to transformative technologies, particularly advanced driver assistance systems, software integration, and autonomous capabilities. General Motors has lagged behind more agile competitors in fully capitalizing on these advancements, despite early investments in systems like Super Cruise, which provides hands-free driving on compatible highways. While the company has demonstrated progress, such as plans for eyes-off driving features by 2028, integration of conversational artificial intelligence assistants, and a unified software platform promising significantly enhanced over-the-air update capacity bandwidth and artificial intelligence performance, the pace of rollout has drawn criticism for being slower than rivals like Tesla, which has aggressively pushed supervised full self-driving capabilities or Waymo in robotaxi applications. General Motors' approach has emphasized safety and incremental evolution from driver assistance to higher levels of autonomy. But observers note that the company's reliance on traditional development timelines and integration challenges with legacy systems has delayed broader deployment of cutting-edge features. Partnerships, such as with NVIDIA for enhanced computing and autonomous vehicles, signal efforts to accelerate progress. Yet the perception persists that General Motors has not matched the speed or boldness of pure-play electric and software-focused entrants. Software integration represents another area of strategic vulnerability, as modern vehicles increasingly function as complex, connected devices requiring seamless over-the-air updates, robust cybersecurity, and intuitive user interfaces. General Motors has invested in centralized computing architectures to enable more frequent and capable updates, aiming for exponential improvements in artificial intelligence performance for autonomy and advanced features. However, early implementations and models have faced criticism for glitches in infotainment systems, connectivity issues, and slower adaptation to consumer expectations for smartphone-like experiences. This contrasts with competitors who have built software-defined vehicles from the ground up, allowing faster iteration and feature enhancements. The company's historical strength in mechanical engineering has not always translated smoothly to software dominance, leading to perceptions of a cultural lag in embracing the shift toward vehicles as rolling computers. Strategically, General Motors remains heavily reliant on its traditional internal combustion engine strengths, particularly in full-size trucks and sport utility vehicles, which continue to generate the bulk of profits and sales in the North American market. Models like the Chevrolet Silverado, GMC Sierra, and their sport utility vehicle counterparts dominate segments where demand for powerful, capable vehicles persists, providing a financial buffer amid slower electric vehicle adoption. However, this dependence leaves the company exposed to shifts in consumer preferences, regulatory changes, or economic conditions that could reduce demand for large, fuel-intensive products. Rivals such as Tesla with its focus on electrification and software ecosystems, Rivian in the premium electric truck space, and Ford with its hybrid and electric offerings have advanced faster in capturing emerging segments, pressuring General Motors to defend its core while catching up in next-generation technologies. While General Motors highlights its diversified portfolio, including profitable internal combustion engine vehicles and growing electric options, as a strength that provides flexibility, critics argue that over-reliance on legacy segments has delayed a more aggressive pivot, potentially ceding ground in the long-term transformation of mobility. These cultural and strategic elements combine to create a challenging internal landscape, where the drive for financial discipline sometimes clashes with the need for bold engineering innovation. Former engineers and industry analysts point to this tension as a root cause of ongoing quality concerns and slower adaptation, suggesting that without a recalibration toward prioritizing technical excellence and forward-looking investments, General Motors risks further erosion of its competitive position. The company continues to emphasize its commitment to safer, smarter vehicles through initiatives in artificial intelligence, autonomy, and software-defined architectures, with leadership asserting confidence in its balanced approach. Yet as the automotive sector evolves rapidly, driven by electrification, connectivity, and autonomy, the resolution of these missteps will prove pivotal in determining whether General Motors can reclaim its stature as an innovator rather than a defender of traditional strengths. For stakeholders watching closely in 2026, the interplay between cultural priorities and strategic execution remains one of the most critical factors shaping the company's trajectory in an increasingly uncertain industry. General Motors operates within a rapidly transforming automotive sector that presents a complex array of challenges and opportunities, with rising trade barriers, persistent supply chain dependencies, and evolving consumer preferences creating significant headwinds for the company as it navigates 2026. The industry has faced escalating tariffs on imported vehicles, parts, and materials, with policies implemented in recent years imposing additional costs that have forced automakers to rethink production strategies, pricing, and sourcing. For General Motors, which relies on a global supply chain for components including batteries, semiconductors, and rare earth materials critical for both internal combustion engine and electric vehicles, these tariffs have increased manufacturing expenses and prompted accelerated reshoring efforts. The company has redirected substantial production volumes, over 650,000 units of vehicles previously assembled in Mexico, such as Chevrolet Silverado and GMC Sierra pickups, toward domestic United States sales to mitigate tariff impacts, while shifting some international-bound output to other markets. Although these adjustments have helped stabilize costs in certain areas and contributed to strong domestic performance, they highlight ongoing vulnerabilities to geopolitical trade dynamics and the potential for further escalations that could squeeze margins across the board. Supply chain disruptions remain a persistent concern, with lingering effects from earlier global events compounded by new pressures such as regional conflicts, raw material shortages, and logistical bottlenecks. General Motors has worked to diversify suppliers and secure domestic sources for key inputs like rare earth magnets essential for electric motors, partnering with United States-based producers to reduce reliance on foreign dependencies. Despite these steps, the automotive sector's interconnected nature means that any major interruption, whether from natural disasters, labor issues, or geopolitical tensions, can ripple through production schedules, delay vehicle launches, and elevate costs. In 2025 and into 2026, these factors have contributed to inventory fluctuations, with some periods seeing tighter supplies that limited sales potential, while others reflected overcapacity adjustments following the electric vehicle slowdown. The company's heavy North American focus amplifies these risks as a disproportionate share of revenue and profits derives from the United States and Canada, leaving General Motors less diversified geographically compared to some global rivals with broader footprints in emerging markets. Shifting consumer preferences represent another major headwind, as buyers increasingly weigh factors like fuel efficiency, upfront affordability, total ownership costs, and environmental considerations against the appeal of large, powerful vehicles. While full-size trucks and sport utility vehicles continue to dominate demand in the United States, segments where General Motors holds commanding positions, leading the full-size pickup category for the sixth consecutive year with record combined sales for the Chevrolet Silverado and GMC Sierra, and maintaining leadership in full-size sport utility vehicles for over 50 years. The broader market shows signs of fragmentation. Consumers are gravitating toward more efficient options, including hybrids that offer better mileage without fully committing to battery electric vehicles, driven by concerns over charging infrastructure, range limitations, higher purchase prices, and the expiration of certain federal incentives. Industry analyses from sources like Deloitte's 2026 Global Automotive Consumer Study indicate steady but cautious demand for pure battery electric models, with hybrids gaining stronger appeal as a practical bridge that balances affordability, everyday usability, and reduced emissions. This trend has prompted General Motors and peers to recalibrate powertrain strategies, extending production of hybrid and efficient gasoline vehicles while scaling back aggressive all-electric timelines to align more closely with actual buyer behavior. General Motors concentrated exposure to North America, where it achieved approximately 2.85 million vehicle sales in 2025, representing a 5.5% increase over the prior year and securing its position as the top-selling automaker ahead of competitors like Toyota underscores both strengths and vulnerabilities. The company captured around 17% market share in the United States, with growth fueled by resilient demand for its profitable trucks and sport utility vehicles amid regulatory and trade uncertainties. However, this heavy regional reliance makes General Motors more susceptible to domestic economic slowdowns, interest rate fluctuations affecting vehicle financing, or policy shifts that could dampen large vehicle sales. In contrast, the company's retreat from certain international markets in recent years, such as reduced operations in Europe, South America, and parts of Asia beyond its significant presence in China, has streamlined focus but limited global diversification. While this strategy has bolstered profitability by concentrating resources on high-margin North American segments, it heightens exposure to localized disruptions, including potential recessions, changing fuel price dynamics, or competitive pressures from import brands gaining traction in efficient or electrified categories. Pessimistic assessments from industry observers and some former insiders suggest that these combined factors — tariffs, supply vulnerabilities, preference shifts toward efficiency, and geographic concentration — could precipitate severe contraction or another existential crisis for General Motors within the next few years if not managed adeptly. Warnings point to parallels with past downturns, where over-reliance on profitable but cyclical large vehicles left the company exposed during economic shifts or fuel crises. Optimistic counterviews, however, emphasize General Motors' enduring strengths in its core segments, where it continues to lead despite broader headwinds, alongside ongoing adaptations like investments in domestic manufacturing, hybrid expansions, and software-driven features to enhance vehicle value. The company's ability to maintain market leadership in trucks and sport utility vehicles, evidenced by 2025 results showing consecutive quarterly gains and overall industry-topping performance, provides a financial foundation to weather turbulence, with executives expressing confidence in balancing legacy strengths with emerging opportunities. As 2026 progresses, General Motors confronts a landscape marked by policy unpredictability, including evolving trade measures and emissions regulations, alongside economic variables that influence consumer spending on big-ticket items like vehicles. The interplay of these broader industry and market headwinds tests the company's resilience, requiring nimble responses in production allocation, pricing strategies, and product planning. While challenges abound, General Motors' dominant positions in key profitable areas, coupled with efforts to mitigate risks through reshoring and diversified powertrains, offer pathways to sustained relevance. The ultimate outcome will depend on how effectively the company addresses these multifaceted pressures in an era of profound sectoral change, where adaptability and customer alignment prove as critical as engineering prowess in determining long-term viability.